Let's do this. Welcome in, everybody. Let's begin this. This is super exciting. I'm so happy that you're here. I just want to take a moment and check in the chat and say hello and everything. Let's get a just quick breakdown of what we're going to be working on this month. So you may or may not have seen my Instagram video that I posted because it hasn't been able to get out there. I think my Instagram account is shadow banned by Instagram for whatever reason that might be. May have used the wrong hashtag again or something like this. But so I did post a video just kind of educating a bit about what we're going to be doing this month. Go check it out if you want a full in-depth detail of what we're going to be going over. But of course, it'll roll out over the next month of what we'll be doing. And I just want to give you an overview. We have a system that I use called the 4 quadrants of the hips. I just created as a simplification for understanding the anatomy of the hip joints. We've got muscles that surround the front, which are usually the hip flexors and the quadriceps. I call that the front quadrant, okay? So the front. Okay, the quads and the hip flexors, they do 2 things. The quads can straighten the knee joint, but at the hip joint, we have one of the muscles called rectus femoris, it's quadricep, and it does hip flexion. Then we have abduction, which is the outer hip quadrant. So we have front, back, outside, inside. Those are the 4 quadrants. We got muscles on each side of those quadrants. Again, we got hip flexors in the front, the muscles on the outside, they do abduction. They're what pull the legs apart. Then we have muscles on the inside, which squeeze the legs together. And we have muscles on the backside, which pushes the legs apart. Now, there's some little tricky points in there where we're going to talk about rotations, inward rotations and outward rotations. And there are some muscles that cross from one quadrant over to the next, even 2 quadrants with the muscle called the sartorius goes from the outside to the inside. But to keep things real simple, we're really just going to start with the 4 quadrants and learn how to activate these muscles. Now, the methodology that I use is 2 things. It always has to do with activation of muscles. The stronger your muscular system, the more possible range of motion that you have, and it's active range of motion. Active versus passive range of motion. Active range of motion means you can actually create the movement for yourself without the assistance of some other outside force or somebody pushing you into it, or gravity having to push upon you, or the use of props and things. And passive flexibility is basically just letting gravity move you into flexibility. And the problem with passive flexibility is that it's totally fine, but if you only have passive flexibility, what that means is you don't have functional movement. So you are only able to move if you place yourself in positions where gravity stretches you, such as a standing forward fold. Nothing wrong with that by any means, but gravity is going to stretch your hamstrings in a standing forward fold. That doesn't mean that you're able to have strong hip flexors, which is the same movement. When you do a standing forward fold like this is called hip flexion. Just because you're able to do a standing forward fold and you have open hamstrings doesn't mean that hip flexion is something that you're capable of. Hip flexion requires strength of the hip flexors and length of the hamstrings. Now, you can do passive stretching to assist in mobility, but ultimately there's no substitute for strengthening muscles that create movement. And I think, if you what I found in my yoga practice, if we're just talking about yoga postures, if you really want to access the range of yoga postures out there, you really can't get away with just passive flexibility. You'll be met with, over time, as you get into the more advanced postures, the requirement is that you eventually will have to have active range of motion, meaning the musculature within you has to be healthy enough to create movements in your joints. And it's hard to kind of understand this concept until you start getting into your body. The other thing is what we do is we activate muscles while the muscles are lengthening, and this is called facilitated stretch. So facilitated stretch is activating the muscles that are lengthened. Whereas what we just talked about, creating using our opposing muscle group, so we can say the front quadrant activating the front quadrant is going to lengthen the back quadrant. So activating the hip flexors and the quadriceps lengthens the hamstrings and the buttocks. And at the same time, we could, in a position like this, learn how to activate the hamstrings and the buttocks, the muscles that are stretching, in order to utilize a technique called facilitated stretching. Now, if you've been practicing with me for the last year or so, or a few months, you're very familiar with facilitated stretching. It's just activating a muscle when it's in its lengthened position. All that means is learning how to, or let's put it this way, creating a neurological connection that when you want to engage your muscles, that they will engage. This is important because muscles can be lengthened and shortened through many ways, but a muscle only has one job, and that is to contract, well, two jobs, or not contract. But a muscle cannot lengthen itself. So the bicep can either contract and shorten, or it cannot contract, but it cannot lengthen itself. The opposing muscle, the tricep, can lengthen the bicep, or gravity in this case can lengthen the bicep. But the bicep can only contract or not contract. The bicep can contract while it's lengthening, it's still contracted here, and it contracts while it's shortening as well. When it's in a lengthened position, if it's contracted, we call that a facilitated stretch. Facilitated stretch, this is the last bit of nerdy stuff I'll give you, okay? And then we'll get into our practice. But, just to give you the preliminary. A facilitated stretch is, what happens is your muscle in a lengthened position, if you activate it, we have something called a Golgi tendon organ, and it receives information from that muscle about how much tension is on that muscle, and it sends a signal up through the brainstem and then says to the brain, like, there's a lot of tension on this muscle. The brain makes a decision, sends a signal back to the muscle and says, hey, release the tension, and you get greater length. So it's a little bit of a kind of a trick, but it's just part of what our body is capable of doing. So ultimately what we're going to be doing in this immersion is two things: activating lengthened muscles and activating muscles in order to create oppositional length. Meaning if I wanted to lengthen my tricep, I would activate my bicep muscle. Now my tricep is lengthened, okay? But we're gonna do that around the hips. This is quite simple for most people to know. So we'll activate our hip flexors in order to create hamstring flexibility. We'll activate our hamstrings in order to create hip flexor flexibility. We'll activate our inner thighs in order to create outer hip flexibility, activate our outer hips to create inner thigh flexibility. So that's the four quadrants. Activating the opposite muscle group will stretch the other, typically, okay? Or at least give you functional range of motion. Then we'll be also doing a heck of a lot of facilitated stretching, activating the same muscle group in order to do that, speak through the Golgi tendon organ, release tension, and create flexibility. This ultimately will give you great flexibility in the body, but in a way that actually enhances the integrity of your muscular system. That's amazing, is that most of the time when people do passive stretching, they actually decrease the integrity of their muscular system, losing functional movement unless it's facilitated by gravity pushing upon them. But we don't want to lose functional movement. We want to actually be able to move more freely, right? We want flexibility to enhance our mobility, not to inhibit our ability to move, right? So if we just passively stretch, then what happens is we inhibit our ability to move. Yes, movement can occur, but if we can't create that movement, if we're always dependent upon gravity or someone else to push us into something, then we've inhibited our mobility. So we want to actually increase mobility. And then what's great is all the yoga postures will unfold much more easily for us once we've developed that even strength throughout the whole body. Okay, that's the whole introduction. Let's make it get this into our body. We're gonna be activating the inner thigh muscles today through different ranges of motion. Hope you're ready for it. Let's start in child's pose with knees wide. Okay, extended child's pose, arms out in front. And I'm just gonna fully close this door over here. so my dog doesn't hear me talking. All right. Let's, where's the Golgi tendon organ? I can look that up for you and maybe send you a, yeah, you can research that. Just do a Google search afterwards on Golgi tendon organ if you're interested in more of that, and you'll learn all about it. And I'll do a little search for you too. Maybe we can put it in the Facebook group. If anybody finds something that they want to share, please do place it in the Facebook group. So with the knees wide and the arms out in front, you can start to feel the sensations of your inner thighs. For some of you, you're going to feel a stretch here. Some of you are going to feel absolutely nothing. Some of you will just feel compression of your bones on top of each other. If you feel that, a couple things you can do is you can rotate your thighs out a little bit, you can start by pushing your knees out and then trying to rotate the top of your thighs away from one another, and that should release some of the compression. Of course, we'll go over more on what the rotations of internal and external are in other classes. Today, we're going to be focusing on inner thighs. However, I do want to give you some little tools along the way. Now, if it's possible, start to press your knees down into the ground and squeeze your shins inward toward each other. And what that will do is start to activate your inner thigh muscles. If you can squeeze your legs in toward each other, specifically the shins, not necessarily the front of the thighs, but the shins, the thighs can actually stay rolled out. The upper thighs, the part that faces the sky, can stay outward, but the shins squeeze in toward each other. And there's something called the midline, the line that divides your body in half from right to left. We squeeze the shins in towards the midline of the body to activate the muscles on the insides of the legs. That's the inner quadrant. And the insides of the legs are called the adductor muscles. There's several of them. Okay, release the activation of your inner thighs. And reach your arms out in front. Come forward to all fours, hands and knees. Arch the back and look up. Exhale, round the spine, gaze inward. Inhale, tuck the toes, arch and look up. Exhale, round and gaze inward. Inhale, arch, look up. Exhale, round. Inhale, arch, look up. Now let's move our way back towards downward facing dog, hips up and back. For the first down dog, you're welcome to bend your knees side to side if you like. Kind of wag the tail a little bit. And then let's take our feet about outer hip width, even like shoulder width apart, pretty wide. Okay? And look at your big toes. Move your big toes toward one another. Don't get too caught up on what that means. If you can, some of you will be able to squeeze your toes inward toward the big toes, specifically towards each other, towards the midline. If that trips you up, don't worry. Now squeeze your shins toward each other like you're trying to pull the mat together underneath your feet. Okay, that should activate your inner thigh muscles. I'd like you to keep that as you slowly tuck your tailbone. It will change. The engagement of the inner thighs will change as you tuck your tail and start to roll into plank very slowly, plank pose, squeezing the front of your shins toward each other as you go. Squeeze your shins in, plank pose. Hold.
Breathe steady as you squeeze your shins in towards each other. Don't let the heels go in. The heels stay up to the sky. The fronts of your shins are squeezing in, and the midsection is pulling up away from the ground. Place the knees down, lower all the way to the ground. Point your feet. Your feet can be fairly wide. Lift the heart on the inhale. Exhale, release. Again, inhale, lift the heart. Exhale, release. Inhale, lift the heart. Exhale, release. All fours, hands and knees. Tuck your toes, exhale, Adho Mukha Svanasana, down dog. Right leg to the sky on the inhale. Bend your knee, open up your hip. Full breath into the right waistline. Straighten the leg on the inhale. Square the hip. And as you exhale, step forward. High up on the fingertips and take a breath. Okay, now remember that midline that divides the center of the body between right and left. So right side, left side, the center of the body is your midline. You're gonna squeeze your two shins. Imagine, I'm just gonna show you, imagine there's a block on the inside of this shin and a block on the inside of the back shin. Okay, just imagine that. And you're gonna squeeze inward, and as a result, watch, your hips should lift upward when you squeeze into the midline. Now, a classic mistake that a lot of people do when they do that is they move their knee in, and I don't mean that. So think lower towards the base of your shin, squeeze in, and your hips should lift up. And in particular, when you squeeze the back leg in there, you should feel that almost all the way up in the groin muscles here. The muscle, probably what we'd feel there is called pectineus. It's a adductor and even a hip flexor muscle as well. Okay, get lighter in the fingers by pushing down into your front heel and round the back. Firm the back leg and squeeze it into the midline. Keep your front knee straight forward so your knee's not winging in, but just squeeze it into the midline as well. Now, to enhance this whole thing, you could also pull your feet toward each other on the diagonal, which is in and toward one another. So into the midline and toward each other. Let's take one more breath in. And we step back into down dog. Forward to plank pose. Pause, let's widen the feet. Stay strong in the upper body and squeeze now your two shins in toward each other. One more breath, squeezing your shins in toward each other. Place the knees down and lower. This should be a pretty heat building practice as you continue, so it gets a little intense to continuously activate inward. Take your hands out wide. Those of you who are new to practicing with me, this takes a little time to get used to, okay? So don't worry if it doesn't feel great right away. This is what we call a three-part cobra. On the inhale, lift the front body up. Exhale, soften, literally melt the midsection down and let your shoulders roll back. Lift up through the top of the skull. Exhale, release. So it's three-part cobra because there's three basically movements. On the inhale, lift up. Exhale, soften, specifically by the kidney band, middle back, low back. Inhale, lift, lengthen the belly up through the skull. Exhale, release. All fours, hands and knees. Tuck your toes, exhale, down dog. Left leg to the sky, inhale. Bend your knee as you exhale, open the hip. Full breath in and out. Straighten the leg on the inhale, square. Step left foot forward. Okay, we come up onto the fingertips. Soften the eyes. Your feet are more or less kind of like hip width apart from side to side here. Okay, so the right foot's not crisscrossing or on a tightrope. Nice wide stance from right to left. Then gather strength inwards, squeeze the two shins in toward each other, or toward the midline, I should say. The center of our body between right and left. And then add on to that. So not only side to side, but pull your feet toward each other as well, front to back. So everything's drawing inward. That's one of the real big tricks about any sort of flexibility. If you want to become more flexible, you draw your muscles inward, you contract them, and that's really counterintuitive for most people. You contract everything inward, and then the release outward will be greater. There'll be more expansion, more length once you've developed the capacity to draw inward. So the shins in side to side. Remember, the front knee doesn't wing in, it stays out, but you just squeeze the bottom of your shin in. The back shin squeezes in, the quads are firmed up. Let's take one more breath. Exhale, step back, downward facing dog. Forward to plank pose. Inhale, squeeze the two shins in toward each other. Exhale, lower knees down if you like, chaturanga. Slide the hands and feet a little wider. Inhale, lift the front body. Exhale, soften the low back forward and down, shoulders up and back. Lengthen the belly and heart upward. Exhale, release. All fours, hands and knees, inhale. Exhale, lead with the tailbone up, downward facing dog. We can just walk the feet slowly to the front of the yoga mat. And if you've got a block, please grab it and place it between your shins. If you don't have a block, it's no big deal. Just find something that you can place between your shins and squeeze. That could be even like a soft ball of some sorts. Even a basketball would work. Could be a big pillow that you squeeze. Either way, just get something to squeeze between your shins. Now, with the block between your shins, I'll call it a block, whatever you got is fine. You're gonna bend your knees and place your hands on your thighs and come up to chair preparation. Okay, as you squeeze the block with your shins, lift your heels up and continue squeezing the blocks with the block with your shins, okay? Heels up, squeeze inward. Then slowly lower the heels back down, continue to squeeze the block. And now move your hips back. So back. Now lift the chest up. Squeezing the block, take the arms into a cactus shape. We bend the elbows, lift the gaze. And exhale, bow forward, fingertips touch the ground. Then straighten the legs and bow. Squeezing the block, inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, bow. Keep squeezing the block, inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, bow. One more, inhale. Remove the block. You can step the left foot back as you exhale. Place the hands on the front knee, come up and pause there. And with your hands on your front knee, let's try to activate the back inner thighs. So squeeze the back shin into the midline. So like you're trying to crisscross your legs. No movement happens, we just activate the back inner thigh. Now today, those of you who are just in the back bend immersion, we'll be approaching lunge differently for this immersion than we did last one. Okay, so with the back leg squeezing in, you can tuck the tailbone and round the back to come up a little bit higher. As you tuck the tailbone, you can press your front heel straight down. So instead of being like this, sagging down, you're gonna push down, your hips will rise up and you'll gain functionality of your glute muscles instead of just kind of falling into the tightness of our muscles. You'll activate your muscles to lift up. And that's one of the keys of developing flexibility, is developing functionality of the muscular system. Squeeze your legs in, lift your belly up, bring your gaze up, and take your arms up to the sky. Let's take 2 more breaths. 1 more breath, squeezing the back leg in. And open now up, warrior 2. We can place the hands on the hips. And since we're in the hips and immersion, I'm going to really focus on a couple of alignment techniques here. First, the front heel bisects the back arch. Okay, just find that line. And we'll just, that way we're all feeling the same action. It's not that it's anything specific or great or whatever, but if we all do the same thing, alignment-wise, then we're all more likely to feel the same muscle groups engage, and my cues for muscle engagements will make more sense. So front heel bisects back arch. Then move your pelvis. Instead of being forward like this, move it back. This is gonna set the femur bones a little deeper in the hip socket so that they're not so pressed forward in the hip joint, okay? So groins back. Okay, now with the groins back this way, start to pull your feet toward each other, specifically the back foot. Press the outer edge of the back foot down, but drag it forward. So it's not just kind of sinking here. Again, we can all just like kind of get into gravity. Instead, draw your muscles in, activate your inner thighs, gain some strength, lift up, and take your arms out to the side. Now, while you're doing this, the tendency for most people in the back leg when they squeeze in is to pull from the back heel. Pull the front of your shin towards the front foot. There shouldn't be any pain in the inner knee. If there is, it means you're pressing the knee down like this. You want to actually lift the back inner knee up as you squeeze your feet towards each other. Okay, keep the shins squeezing in. We'll just take 1 more breath here. And let's move to reverse warrior. Inhale. Exhale, hands to the ground. Inhale to plank pose. Exhale, lower. Slide hands and feet wide. Inhale, lift the front body. Soften, completely release. Just let your shoulders go back and up. Now, press the heart forward. Lift the belly up through the skull. Exhale, release. To the ground. All fours. Exhale, Adho Mukha Svanasana, down dog. Take a moment, feel your right and left hip. Let's take 1 more breath. Lift the heels up, inhale, look forward. Empty the breath out, walk, step, or hop to the front. Halfway lift on the inhale. Exhale, bow. Rise to the sun, Urdhva Hastasana. Hands to the heart, Samastitihi. Inhale, Urdhva Hastasana, all the way up. Exhale, bow, Uttanasana, forward fold. Halfway lift on the inhale. Right foot steps back as you exhale. Inhale, hands to the front thigh, pause there. And draw your feet toward each other, not only front to back, but also side to side, like you're compacting your hips, drawing the energy into the midline. Okay, from that strength, keep the back inner knee, inner thigh, lifted and strong. Okay, staying strong in the legs side to side and pressing down through the front heel. So you see how buoyant and light the pose is right here? This is like very mobile. If I wanted to step out of it, I could very easily, right? And if I want to step back into it, I could. Versus if I'm down here, you know, like just sinking in with gravity, and it's a, you know, I got to move my whole body in order to step forward.
where we want to get into a position here where it's like very light, buoyant, and strong. So it's just a simple movement, okay? If we ever wanted to. But that's how you know your muscles are in a good preparatory position. They're in a position that can move. They're mobile because they're strong and in empowered position. Now, lift the arms up to the sky, squeezing the legs in. Let's take one more full breath in and open up warrior two. Hands can come to the hips. Okay, instead of the right hip pressing forward, move your hips back. As if you're trying to sit your butt down on a chair, you would want both hips evenly on the chair. So your right hip, instead of pointing forward, you're gonna face your butt to the same direction, or both hips facing the same direction, however you wanna look at that. Okay, so sway the back thigh bone back. Now, draw your feet toward each other. And again, try not to collapse the inner thigh. Lift the back inner thigh up away from the ground. And then, as if you're pressing your feet downward, imagine below the surface of the earth. You're pressing down and pulling toward each other. Okay, keeping that. Then come more upright. Remember, I didn't mention it, but your front heel bisects the back arch. And take the arms out to the sides and gaze over your front hand. Let's do 2 more breaths. Okay, moving into reverse warrior. Exhale, hands to the ground.
Plank pose, inhale. Chaturanga. Slide hands and feet wide. 3-part cobra, inhale.
Soften.
Inhale, lengthen the front belly. Push the heart forward and up.
Exhale, release.
All fours. Exhale, down dog. Hang here for 2 breaths. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Lift the heels up on the in-breath, look forward. Exhale to walk, step, or hop to the front of the mat. Halfway lift when you get there. Exhale, bow. Inhale, rise, Urdhva Hastasana to the sun.
Hands to the heart, Samastitihi.
Inhale, reach up. To the earth, bow, Uttanasana. Halfway lift, inhale. Left foot back as you exhale. High lunge, rise up. Warrior two, open up. Reverse warrior. Chaturanga, exhale. 3-part cobra, inhale. Soften, exhale. Lengthen the belly up through the skull. Exhale, release. All fours, hands and knees. Tuck the toes, down dog. Let's take the right leg to the sky, inhale, same side. Step forward as you exhale. Rise, high lunge, inhale. Open up, warrior two. Reverse warrior, inhale. Side angle preparation, that means forearm comes to the thigh, hand comes to the hip. And we pause here. Same actions that we did in warrior two. It's essentially the same pose. Let me just try to get this a little out of my way. Okay. So you slide the hips back, and that might send your chest forward, and that's cool, all right? So just move your groins back. Now, With your groins back, try to press the back edge of the foot down and drag it towards the front without pressing the inner thigh down this way. The inner thigh actually lifts up away from the ground while pulling the back foot forward. And that's where you're gonna feel the adductors. Again, this is a facilitated stretch. Now, we're gonna do something similar on the front leg. It's a bit challenging, okay? So if it's possible for you, you can slide your hand down to a block. It's a great idea. Or fingertips to the ground like so. Either way is fine. Okay, but with your right shoulder, you're gonna push outward into the knee. Most people do that and they send the back hip forward again. Keep the hip back. Now, keeping the hip back, let's see, a good angle probably right here. You're gonna move your shoulder out into the knee and then your knee is gonna squeeze into the shoulder. What that will do is activate the adductors of the front leg. So the back shin squeezes towards the front leg. The front knee squeezes into the arm. If it's possible to continue those actions, I know it's a lot, to keep both adductors active. See if you can now start to turn your chest for side angle pose. It should be tiring, of course, more tiring than you're used to if you normally aren't activating all these muscles, right? Because now you're activating all the muscle groups while still sustaining a posture. So you'll get tired quicker. That means you're getting stronger. So invite that in. One more breath. Both hands to the ground. Pivot the back heel up. We're gonna step forward on the inhale. Half lift. And take a moment here as you bow to feel the right and left side. Hold here for one more breath. All right. Let's come to chair pose. Again, this for today, a little different than most of us are used to practicing with me. You're gonna take your, actually we'll go with this one. Take your block and place it right between your upper inner thighs. Where are we gonna find a good angle for that? Okay, so the block goes to the upper inner thighs, and then you'll squeeze the block as you sit down into chair pose. Move your hips back, squeezing the block. As you squeeze the block, we're gonna do just a little weird exercise that will be interesting. And the exercise is you're gonna lean to your right foot and lift your left leg up, but squeeze the block. So squeeze it in without crisscrossing your legs. Just squeeze the block with your left leg. And you see my foot is still hip width apart here. Then I'm gonna transition to the left foot, squeezing the right thigh into the block, lift the right leg up. You see how my feet are still hip width apart, so I didn't sickle the foot or crisscross. I squeezed in from the upper thighs and kept the legs exactly as they are. Transition back, right foot, squeeze the left thigh into the block. You will feel your muscles underneath the block actually engage into the block, right? Switch again, squeeze the block with your right leg in this awkward chair position, and then release both feet to the ground and release the block, bow forward. You might feel cramping in your hip flexors or your the muscle called TFL. If you did all that properly, I'll explain that another time, but that's part of it. Inhale, halfway lift. Right foot back as you exhale. Left side lunge. Inhale, rise. Open warrior two. Inhale, reverse. Exhale, hands to the ground. Inhale, plank. Sorry, I think I added a step here. Chaturanga. Slide hands and feet wide, inhale. Soften the low back, mid back down and forward. Shoulders back. Pull the belly up through the top of the skull. Exhale, release all the way down. All fours, hands and knees. Tuck the toes, exhale, down dog. Left side to the sky, inhale. Same leg, step left foot forward. Rise, high lunge, inhale. Open up, warrior two. Reverse warrior, inhale. Side angle preparation, forearm to the thigh, hand to the hip, and just adjust if you need so that your front heel bisects the back arch. Okay, front heel bisects the back arch. Some of you might have lines on your mat, like I have some notification lines that tell me where the center of the mat is. That's helpful, like one foot is on the line, the other foot straddles the line. Okay, but you can kind of draw it in your mind and make sure. Now move the groins back. First step is getting the back inner thigh active. Again, that's going to be a facilitated stretch. So you're going to squeeze your back foot down and forward, keeping this back inner thigh from collapsing. Lift it up as you pull your back foot forward. Okay, if you're feeling any sort of knee issues, usually it means you're collapsing the weight into the inner knee, like pressing down this way instead of lifting up. Or it might mean that you might have to soften your knee a little bit, and by which you would be activating your hamstrings, hopefully. It's a bit complicated. Maybe we'll get there in another class, but for now you can micro bend it. Now the front knee is the hard one, right? That's where you're going to place the block on the inside of the foot or your fingertips, whichever works for you, and try to squeeze this shin into your arm, but don't let the knee wing in, right? So move your shoulder, let your shoulder win a little bit, move your shoulder into the knee, and then squeeze your knee into the arm in opposition. And what you should feel is your inner thigh, your left inner thigh muscles toning up, activating. Still managing to keep the back inner thigh active as well. So don't lose the back shin squeezing forward, back inner thigh lifting away from the ground, and still squeeze this front knee into the arm. While you do that, start to rotate the chest the best of your ability towards the sky, maybe taking the right hand up. All right, and release the hand. Now, step forward, inhale, halfway lift. Exhale and bow forward. Take the hands to the hips and rise up to stand. We're gonna do a funky pose to get the adductors turned on. So what I'd love for you to do is, I'm gonna face you actually. You're gonna turn your, actually let's do this. Take your left knee up towards your chest and then do your best to extend the left leg forward like so, and that will be your hip flexors that activate, okay? And then bend and release. Let's do the right side. Bring your right knee up and then straighten the leg the best you can. They'll be your right hip flexors, okay? Bend and release. Now we're gonna switch it. We're gonna rotate the leg outward, and this was gonna target against gravity the inner thigh muscles. So try this with me. Bend your knee and rotate outward the best way you can, okay? So turn out. Now, as you do so, extend the leg with the thigh turned out, and it'll force you to activate your adductor muscles. Think about lifting your inner heel to the sky, okay? And if you're doing this right, the lift when your leg is turned out is gonna be your groins, your adductors. Okay, you can release. Okay, and that's going to be fairly difficult. So let's try it again on the other side. The way we get into it is you come up, rotate out, then as you extend, think about the inner heel lifting up. Most of you will start to rotate back in. Think about this inner heel, the back of the Achilles tendon here, lift that up, okay? And that will start to be, if you do enough rotation outward, you'll get your adductors engaged. If you don't, you can bring the leg out a little bit, and you might be able to get more rotation for some of you, maybe accessing it. Okay, bend the knee and release. We're gonna do the other side again. This is developing functional movement, meaning activating a muscle in order to create an action. And today's action is adduction, squeezing in,
But adductor muscles can do more than just squeezing in. They can do hip flexion, especially when the leg is externally rotated like this. So here we go. Other side, rotate, and then kick out in front of you. And this time we're gonna do some pulses. Lift, like we're in an 80s aerobics video. Okay, and release. Ooh, yeah. Other side, rotate, reach, and pulse. Just what you wanted to do today, I know. Okay, and release. Now, come onto your butt, sit down, and let's do a couple of more exciting things. First one, you're gonna place the block between, let's go shins for now. And with the block between your shins, you can lift your chest up, sit back, squeeze the block into low boat or half boat. Okay, squeezing the block, flex your feet. Now, if you can, squeeze the block with the legs straight. Boat pose, squeezing the block is the important part, okay? So are you squeezing the block? Don't let it drop, squeeze the block. Now bend the knees and then release and let go. We don't have to hold that too long. Now, more exciting, we're gonna get the adductors awake. So start in like a Baddha Konasana position, right? With Charlie Chapman kind of feet or something. So legs are turned out here, and then you're gonna lean back and pull the legs up like so. Stay there, I'm gonna just change the angle. And now with external rotation, you're gonna reach your legs straight with external rotation into boat pose with legs turned out, and this will force your inner thighs to do the heavy lifting that normally your hip flexors would do. And it's just a different story. So turn your legs out, forcing the adductor muscles to turn on the deep groin muscles. Turn the legs out and stay in Navasana boat pose. Okay, now bend the knees and sit on up. Place the heels together. I'm gonna do a few of these. In Baddha Konasana, you're gonna take your elbows to your inner thighs like so, and with your elbows, you can gently rest the weight of your arms downward. But with your knees, squeeze your knees up into your elbows, okay? So you feel hopefully what you feel is the resting of your arms, right? Put some pressure on the legs, but the knees squeezing up is gonna activate your adductors, your inner thighs. We can add one more thing on here. As you press your knees up into your arms, squeeze or press your heels into each other. So press your heels of your feet into one another while the knees are squeezing up into the arms. Okay, activating these adductor muscles. Okay, then relax. Bring the knees together for a moment. Back into Navasana in this Charlie Chapman feet. So flex feet, lift up, and start to straighten the legs with the toes turned out. Oh, I got a great idea. Let's release for a second. This time, you're gonna actually do the same thing, but with the block between, you can do it easy way, block between your legs, squeezing, yeah, that's fun. Okay, or between your upper thighs, whatever works. I'm trying to give you a good angle here. It's kind of hard to see, huh? Squeezing the block between your legs while turned out, squeezing the block in. Oh, that's fun. Let's try it, come on. Squeeze the block in with your legs turned out. Turn your legs out, squeeze in. Okay, release the block, come into Baddha Konasana again. Cobbler's pose. Your knees press up into the arms the best you can, but this time you're gonna scoot your bum back a little bit. So you'll tip forward more. Press your knees up into your elbows. Now push your heels into each other while squeezing your knees up into your elbows. All right, bring the legs together. Now, turn sideways and you're gonna bring your left shin to the ground with a pointed foot. Okay, the foot is pointed. Move the hips back. Flex the right foot. Let's see here. Actually, let's do this. Turn your right leg out. So let it go all the way out. And then with your hands supporting you behind you, see if you can lift your right leg up and pulse it a few times. Doing the best to keep your leg as straight as possible while doing so. Some of you, this may not be possible at all. You'll be like, why can't I move my leg? Okay, so this is developing functionality of the muscle group, being able to lift and release with control. Okay, now let's draw the fingers forward and bow forward. Now it's just a stretch of the muscles that we've been lengthening. Let's do a couple more breaths. One more breath. Come on up. Switch sides. Right heel in, left leg out. We'll start with those little functional movements of being able to activate the adductors. So the leg rotates out. That's going to ensure that the inner thigh muscles are what's active, and we pulse upward. Okay, then regular rotation of the leg, and we bow forward to the center here for this variation. All right, come on up. Let's swing to the front of the mat again. Come back to cobbler's pose, positioning. What you're gonna do for this variation now is you're gonna actually allow your feet, like you're opening a book, to do what's called inverting the ankles. If you've practiced with me, you probably know that I don't ever really teach that. But for this, it's gonna help you if you invert the ankles to bring the knees a little closer to the ground. Now here's the key, okay? Move your groins back and place your elbows on the inner knees. Now squeeze the knees up into the elbows, even though your feet are opened up. Squeeze the knees up into the elbows and lead with your solar plexus forward. So knees squeeze up into the elbows. So you're not trying to like press the knees down. You're actually trying to pull them up. There's these little, what were called Chinese handcuffs when we were a kid, and you'd put your fingers in. If you try to pull your fingers out, the handcuff would get tighter and wouldn't allow your fingers out. But if you were smart, you would push it together and that would release the tension and allow you to take your fingers out. The muscular system is very much the same way. If you squeeze in, if you draw everything in, it then releases outward, okay? It's just, it's hard for us to grasp that. We're used to kind of forcing our way through life, making things happen by like trying to push them further. But the muscular system won't allow you to do that. You have to draw it in. You have to pull the body into it, and then it will release outward. Okay, come on up. Functional movement, flex your foot and lift the left leg up with the toes turned out, and we'll do some pulses. Other side, left foot down, right foot pulses. See how the foot is turned out? That's how it's caused, or if it's not turned out, if it's like this, it's just gonna be hip flexors. So if you turn it all the way out, the knee out, the thigh out, then it's gonna be adductors, okay? It has to be turned out for this exercise to target the inner thigh muscles. Ooh, also the psoas up in there. Oh yeah. Okay, now, cobbler's pose again. This time you're gonna press your outer feet into each other. And as you press your outer feet into each other, you can pull your knees isometrically back behind you. And that's gonna give you a little more range of motion in the hips. Scoot your hips in any direction that you need. Press your outer heels and inner outer edges of your feet into each other, just like you kind of been doing with like you're squeezing a block. Squeeze your feet into one another, okay? As you pull your knees back behind you. Try to pull your knees back behind you while pressing the outer edges of your feet into each other, squeezing in. Then you can round your back and tuck your chin if you'd like to get to the full extent of cobbler's pose. And come on up. All right. Bring your legs, I usually do with some resistance. I squeeze the legs back in against resistance. And then we'll do the opposite for a moment. Let your knees knock in, toes out. All right, let's swing around. Head should be at the top of your yoga mat. Come lay on your back. Take half happy baby. So your right hand grabs either the outer edge of the foot. Your left hand can nudge your knee out to the side a little like so. And then with your right knee, gently press inward towards the left hand, activating the adductors here. Might be a little bit challenging to figure that out. Doesn't have to be a lot of activation now. It can be more subtle as we're starting to cool down. Okay, switch it up. Half happy baby over here on the left side. Right hand presses the knee out. Left knee squeezes back into the right hand. And release. Hug both shins gently towards the chest. Nothing too extreme here. And let's move into Shavasana or constructive rest if you prefer. I usually do constructive rest with the knees knocked in, or just full extended Shavasana with the feet splayed out to the sides, palms face up. And then you can slowly let the sound of Ujjayi breath release so that there's no tension in the muscles of the throat or the jaw or around the teeth. awareness back to your breath. As you breathe, become aware of your body and the sensations of it. Awaken the fingers and the toes. Stretch the arms. And roll to your side. And when you're ready, make your way up to a seated position. Let's take a moment to place the palms together in front of the heart. We honor each other. This community around the world. We also honor everyone that has passed this practice down to us, for all the effort and the time, the energy that has been spent to share this practice that brings about such well-being. We bow into everyone before us and this community here, right now. Thank you all so much for your effort, for showing up. I'm excited to continue this journey together. Namaste. All right, everybody. So I hope that the practice served you well. This is just the beginning, the foundations of the inner thigh muscles. Next class, we'll work on a different quadrant, different pose, and you'll see how over the course of the immersion, we'll layer in the knowledge that you gained from this one. We'll also continue to add it into the future classes, and we'll get more and more complex as we go along. So thank you, everybody. I'm just going to take a moment to read the chat comments. Annie says, phenomenal practice. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Annie. Nice to have you in here. Emily says, thank you, Matt. Lifting the leg externally rotated was hard. Feel it tomorrow. Love it. Looking forward to the rest of this journey. Awesome, Emily. Thanks for being here. Thank you for practicing and for your effort and facing the challenges with externally rotated leg. Marissa says, thanks, Matt. I don't think my legs have ever shaken as much inside angle. Fabulous. Thanks, Marissa. I'm happy to give you a little challenge in your practice. Kaylee says, I certainly feel the adductors. Thank you. Loved it. Awesome, Kaylee. Glad to hear that. Kristen says, I sense sore muscles in the future. Totally, Kristen. Patrick Hefferman says, beautiful class. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Patrick. Nice to have you here. Tara Scheller, hello. Thank you, Matt. Killing me with those boat pose variations. Definitely dropped the block. Thanks, Tara. I'm sure the next time you won't drop the block. Nina says, thank you. Enjoyed a lot, as always. Thank you, Nina G. Deanna says, thanks, Matt. Great class. Thank you, Deanna. Johanna says, thank you so much. So, what does it say? So creative and helpful. I love it. Awesome. Thanks, Johanna. Appreciate that. Petty says, thanks a lot. My legs have shaken too, but love to work on it. Awesome. Thanks, Petty. Dina. What's up, Dina? Thanks, Matt. So many ways to activate the adductors. Feeling great. See you on the next one. Thanks, Dina. See you on the next one. Simona says, thanks, Matt. Great class. External hip rotation, the hardest for me, and doing it actively is certainly challenging. Thank you, Patty. Thanks for facing the challenges. Michelle says, thanks so much, Matt. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Michelle. Nice to see you here. Thanks for being here. Sabui says, thank you so much. Thanks for the inner thighs. We're shaking in half baby pose. Yeah, mine too. Half happy baby. Somewhat happy. Elena, hello. Thank you, Matt. Enjoy the day. You too, Elena. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Kermit, for the name of the organ. Absolutely. Thank you, Kermit. Pat Hansen says, thanks. Definitely harder to lift the leg with it externally rotated. I'm in PT for some right hip bursitis. Was able to do everything okay. I'll help in the long run to strengthen, I think. Totally, Pat. Yeah. Certainly a practice to continue with. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Those of you that had a chance to participate in the chat, thanks for being here as well. Those of you that are tuned in after the live, I hope you enjoyed the experience and looking forward to sharing the next one with you. See you soon.